For years we've been waiting for an Xbox 360 mod that works on every single console model, and one that doesn't require any soldering or even opening up the box. Welcome to the Bad Update software exploit. Hi and welcome to Bytes and Bits. For quite a few years, hacking the Xbox 360 has involved opening up the console and modifying the motherboard with either glitched chips or, more recently, just a couple of wires that allow the modding software to exploit the processor and run our homebrew code. Now, these reset glitch hacks or JTAG hacks are still the best way to mod your console, but they suffer from two big downsides. One, of course, is that you need the skills to modify the motherboard. Now, it's not too hard, but if you're new to soldering, there's always the risk of damaging the circuits. And secondly then, the mod only works on the older versions of the Phat and Slim models. So later Slim models and super slim consoles just can't be hacked using this method. But this changed in 2025 with the release of the Bad Update software exploit. Now, I've made a video describing how this mod works, so for more information please do have a look at that. But basically the exploit uses a bug in the game saving code to get access to the hypervisor system on the Xbox 360. And again, that gives us the ability then to run our own code and control the console. Now, this solves the two issues with the hard modded consoles. So there are no hardware modifications to make, so you don't have to open up the actual model itself. And the exploit works on every single Xbox 360 model. So in this video, I'll show you how to install Bad Update with just a simple USB thumb drive. Everything we need can be easily downloaded, and there's no need to buy any games. Now, part of the setup process does need us to modify some of the Xbox files, and we'll be using a Windows command line app to do that. So you will need access to a Windows PC or a Linux machine that can run Windows terminal applications using something like Wine. Now, before we start, just a few notes to limit your expectations of this mod. So this isn't a true soft mod. The exploit is performed in software after the console boots up. Now, this means that if the console is reset, or if you power off, or if it crashes, the exploit is cleared from memory and has to be re-enabled. It doesn't need to be fully reinstalled, but you still need to run the enabler to get back control of the console. Now, this process can take a while to complete, so you can't just boot up the Xbox and start playing straight away. You could be waiting for over 30 minutes, but it's usually a bit faster than that. Now, if you can hard mod your console, then I would still advise this route, but Bad Update now gives you two working options. So with that said, let's exploit our Xbox. So first off then, we need to get a few things set up to run the exploit. The Bad Update code needs a specific version of the Xbox 360 firmware. To check your console, you need to go into the Settings, System, and then the Console Settings, and then select System Info near the bottom of the list. Now, this will display your current dashboard version on the right. At the time of making this video, Bad Update needs version 17559, which is the current latest release. Now, if you're installing the exploit and are on a higher dashboard setting, then you'll need to check the Bad Update repository to make sure that it's compatible with your version. If you're on a lower version of the dashboard, then you'll need to run an update. Now, we're not going to use the normal Microsoft update, as we can't guarantee that that will install the version we need. The software version may have moved on since we set this up. So we're going to install the update using a USB drive. Now, at this point, it is worth considering what USB drive you're going to use. So Bad Update itself is going to be stored on this USB drive, and it will need to be attached to the console while you're using the exploit. You can also use the USB drive for your homebrew apps and even your game files. So make sure you choose a USB drive that's large enough to hold everything, and fast enough not to become a bottleneck as you try and load and run files. Now, you don't have to store your games on the USB drive. They can be stored on your hard drive. So again, that can reduce the size of drive you need. So for my setup, I'm going to be using a 64GB US stick, and that will have all of my homebrew and bad update files on that, and probably a couple of games, but most of my games then I will store on my internal hard drive. So once you've got your USB drive sorted out, plug it into your Xbox and go back to your system setting menu and then select the storage option. Now, if you've used this USB drive before in your Xbox, it will show up as a USB drive. Otherwise, like me, you'll see an uninitialized drive. So highlight it and then look at the button options on the left. If the drive is already Xbox ready, you'll have a Y button, and you can simply use that and then select the format option. Otherwise, again, like me here, press the A button and we can then go off and format that drive. Now do remember that this process is going to wipe your drive clean, so make sure that there isn't anything on that drive that you need to keep. So once that process has completed, this will give us a correctly formatted USB drive that will work with our console. So we now need to go off and download our firmware. So back on our computer, we need to go to this forum post, and I'll put a link to all of these in the video description. Now, if you scroll down a bit, you should see a link to download the 17559 version dashboard. So simply download this to your computer. Now, this will come down as an archive file, so you're going to need to extract its contents out to a folder on your PC. If we now look inside this folder, you'll see the actual update code folder, and this needs to be copied over to the root of your Xbox USB drive. So once that's copied over, we need to take the USB drive back to the Xbox. Make sure you're on the main dashboard and plug in the USB drive. So the console should see the update file and offer to restart to install it. So just select yes and then let it run through the update process. So this is going to take a little bit of time, and it will be in 2 stages with a reboot of the Xbox in the middle of that. So just wait until you get back to the main dashboard again. If you now go over to the settings page, then system settings and console info, you should now see that the dashboard version on the right is the one that we need. So we can now use our updated console to reformat our USB drive just to ensure that it matches our new firmware. So go back to the settings menu and then storage, select the USB drive with the Y button, and again go off and format it. And again, as I said, this gives us a fully cleaned drive formatted to the latest dashboard version. So our console and our USB drive are now ready for the mod. So we need to go back to our computer, and again you'll need that USB drive plugged back into it so that we can build our exploit code package. So first off, we'll need the bad update code itself. Now, if you head over to the main GitHub repository, and again, I'll put all of these links down in the description, you'll come to this page, and here you'll find loads of information about the project with full instructions for what we're about to do. So please do have a look through this to get an overview of what's going on, and to get a feel for how much work has gone into creating this great software mod. But we do need to get hold of some of the files. So head over to the releases section, and then in the latest released post, download the bad update retail zip file. And you're also going to need this tool zip file. So download both of those and save them into a bad update folder on your hard drive so that you can keep all of the files together in one location. Now, we're going to be downloading quite a few blocks of code, and we're going to have to modify some of them. So I do advise that you do keep your files organized. So once we've downloaded those archive files, we can extract them into their own folders so that we have access to the actual files that we want, and we can then delete the downloaded archives. Now, this will leave us with the tools folder and the bad update folder. So the various downloads that we're going to do, all of those will come down as archive files. So as we download them, we're going to have to go through this process each time to extract them into their own folder. So if you don't see me doing that for each file, then just assume that that's what I've done. So next then we need a game that Bad Update can use for the update exploit entry point. So at the start, this had to be a retail copy of Tony Hawk's American Wasteland. And of course, as soon as that came out, it sent prices of that game skyrocketing to upwards of £100 per copy. Now, luckily, the developers found that a free demo of Rock Band Blitz also contained the exploitable code, so we can simply download a copy of that from this digex page. So again, make sure that you extract the archive file that you download. So we've now got our bad update code and our exploitable game, so we actually need some software then to run on the system. So the first piece of software we need is a package called XeUnshackle. So when the bad update exploit succeeds in gaining control of the console, it needs some base level code to replace the official menu system so that we can then run our homebrew apps and control the Xbox. So XeUnshackle actually replaces the payload package that comes built in to the bad update download. And it replaces that then with one that provides quite a lot more extra features and compatibility over the original mod software. So this really lets us start to make full use of the modded console. Now again, there's lots of info on the GitHub page for this application, so do have a look through that. So essentially, Unshackle allows you to run dash launch plugins which allow a bad update exploited console to do most of the things that a fully RGH hacked console can do. It's also going to let us boot into our own custom dashboard so that we can get straight to playing our games. But again, we'll talk about some of its features as we install it. So again, head over to the GitHub repository and go into the releases section and download the latest version. So again, this will be in a zip file format. So once you've downloaded it into your bad update folder, make sure you extract the files into their own folder. So that gives us everything we need to run the bad update exploit. But once we've got that going, we're going to need some homebrew applications to let us take full advantage of the modded console. So XeXMenu allows us to do some base level tasks such as browsing our files and launching other homebrew apps. So if you head over to this forum thread, you can download the live version, which will allow us to run it from our USB drive. So the very first thing we'll need to do once we get everything up and running is to back up our system NAND data. Now this code is essential if we ever need to recover our console after something bad happens and we brick it. So without it, you could well end up with a fully bricked Xbox 360. So we're going to need the simple 360 NAND Flasher app that you can download from this website. So finally then, it would be great to have some sort of dashboard to manage our games and give us a great looking games launcher screen. Now there are a few different apps that you can use, but I'm going to use the Aurora app. So again, pull up this web page and download and extract the download files here. So now that all of our downloads are sorted out, if you look in your download area, you should have a number of these extracted folders for each of the files that we've downloaded. Again, if there's some of them you haven't extracted yet, then please do and put them into their own folders. So we now need to build these files onto our USB drive. So to make this easier, I'm just simply going to open up two File Explorer windows here. And one I'm going to set to look at the files on my PC, so in my bad update download area, and the other then will be looking at my USB drive. So this will make it easier to show you where to copy the files and where to move them to. Now we do need to be able to see hidden files and file extensions, so do make sure that these are turned on in your File Explorer. So if they're not, just simply go into the View menu here, the Show menu, and then turn on both of these options. So first we'll deal with the bad update files. So open your extracted bad update folder, and inside there you'll find two subfolders. So each game that you can use to trigger the exploit needs its own customized files. So we're using Rock Band Blitz obviously. So open up the folder and simply copy everything that's inside there to the root of your USB drive. And again, if you get any messages about overwriting files, then just say yes. So now we need to install XeUnshackle. So open up its extracted folder and you should see this set of files. Now there is a README file in this package which does give you a lot of information. So if you are planning on running a stealth server or doing more than just sort of playing games, then please do have a look through that. There are certain aspects of the package that you need to be aware of. But for most of us then, we can just get on with the installation. So again, all we need to do is to copy everything from this folder onto the root of your USB drive. And this will actually ask you about overwriting some of the files, but you must say yes to that. And what's happening here is that the XeUnshackle package is replacing some of the bad update files with the XeUnshackle versions, and that is exactly what we want. So next, we'll copy over the Rock Band Blitz files. So if you open up the extracted folder, you'll find a contents folder. Inside that, you'll find a 16 zeros folder, and then inside that, you'll actually find the Rock Band Blitz package. Now, if you've played around with JTAG or RGH modded systems, you'll be familiar with the notion of a GOD or a game on demand style format package. And that's what we've got here. So if I look in the same location on my USB drive, you'll find that we already have a content folder with 16 zeros and a GOD package folder already created in there by the bad update package. So we need to merge these two folders. So in your download folder, drag the whole GOD package folder and then drop that into the 16 zeros folder on your USB drive. Now this of course gives us our game files for Rock Band Blitz, which we just copied across now, and that will merge them then with a game save file from the bad update package. And it's the save file that is going to be the actual game trigger for our exploit. So now we'll install the downloaded XeXMenu package. So again, go to your download area and open the extracted folder for that. And then there you'll probably find two further archive files. So we want to use the live version, so you're going to need to extract those into their own folder. Once that's extracted then, you can go inside that and you'll find a C0DE999 folder or a code 9999 folder. Now this needs to be copied over to that 16 zeros folder, again in the content folder on our USB drive. So now it's time for the actual homebrew applications. So these need to be prepared in a special way for bad update to be able to run them. So the Xbox 360 executable files used by the homebrew apps need to be patched to have various restrictions removed from them. So on an RGH modded machine, the modded firmware actually handles this for you, but on bad update, we need a Windows app to actually patch the files. Now this is something you'll need to do for all of the homebrew apps, and we're also going to need to patch game files that we want to install. So I'm going to run through the process with our simple NAND flasher app, and then you simply need to repeat that process for any other homebrew apps such as Aurora, and just modify those and patch them in the same way. So to patch a file, I'm going to open up the simple NAND flasher package here. So in there, you'll find the code file, which is this default.xex executable. So we need to move the app's default xex file into the xepatcher folder, and you'll find that in the extracted tools folder that we downloaded from the bad update website. So if you highlight the file in our simple NAND flasher package and cut it out, we can then navigate out to our download folder, then find the tools folder, and inside there we should find xepatcher, and then if we go in there, we can simply paste our file here. So this file at the bottom here, the xextool.exe file, is the actual application that we need to use, but we can't run it directly by double-clicking it. It needs to be run from the command line. So if you've got a command line application like PowerShell installed, you should be able to just simply right-click on this xexpatcher folder and then open up your command line. But if you haven't got that, you can simply go up to the path in the File Explorer here, delete what's in there and type in cmd. And this will open up the command line application and will also then drop you into the correct folder. So if you now type the dir command, you should see that we are able to see all of the files that we need to use. If you can't see these, you're probably in the wrong folder. So you will need to make sure that you get into the right folder. Again, if you're not sure what to do, just simply quit out of this and go back into the File Explorer and use that little trick about typing CMD into the command and into the path line while you're looking at the folder you want to be launched into. So we now need to patch that XeX file. So all you need to do is in your command line, you need to type in this command, and it has to be exactly as I'm typing here. So we need to type in xextool.exe, and be careful here with the capitalization. We then want space -m, space R, space -R, space A. So those are various switches that we're going to be supplying into the XeX tool to tell it exactly what we want to do. So after that, that's the base command that we need. But after that, then we have to tell it which file we want to patch. So space after the A, and then the file name for the file that we currently want to patch. So again, if this one here, we want default.xex. And again, pay attention to the capitalization on your file names. So if you then press return, our app will just simply run through and patch that default.xex file for us. So if you look at the output then, you can see that it's removed various restrictions and it's then converted the file to a retail package file. And Bad Update needs these executable files to be the retail versions. It can't run any other versions. So lastly then, we do need to move this patched file back into our homebrew app folder. So again, I'm going to cut the file out from this XeX patcher folder, and then I'm going to navigate back to my simple 360 NAND flasher folder, and then I'm going to paste it back in there. Now again, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to need to go through this process with all the XeX executable files in your homebrew apps. That will then get them to work with this Bad Update exploit. So once you've done all of that, we can now go to the root of our USB drive, and here we're going to create an apps folder for all of our homebrew apps. So all we need to do then is to copy each of our homebrew app folders. So here I'm copying across this simple 360 NAND flasher folder, and I'm just simply going to copy it into that new apps folder. And that then is all of our homebrew apps. At least once you've copied all the folders across, that's all of them ready to go. So that's our USB drive ready. So let's take it over to our Xbox 360 and plug it in there. So we're now ready to run the exploit. So first though, we need to make sure that our console and accounts aren't going to get blocked by Microsoft. So if your console connects to the Microsoft Live servers once Bad Update has been installed, you do have that risk of being banned. So before we start, you need to disconnect from your network. Now if you're using an Ethernet connection, just simply unplug it. If you're on Wi-Fi, then you'll need to go over to your settings page, network settings, and then forget your Wi-Fi connection. Now this will make sure that the console can't access the Microsoft servers. So from this point on, it's best to leave the console offline. Now, as we'll see in a moment, we will be able to reconnect to download game covers and so on, and XeUnshackle will actually block the console from connecting to the live servers. But Bad Update itself is a non-persistent mod, which means that when the Xbox first boots up, it will actually be in its full retail mode. So if it does try to connect to the live servers, any protection that you're provided by your Bad Update code or the applications you run won't actually be active, and it won't be able to protect you. So if you do enable your network, which you can safely do to get title updates and cover art in Aurora, then make sure to turn it back off again once the downloads have finished. Now we can check that the USB drive is working by going across to our settings page, system and storage devices, and you should see the USB drive listed. Now, if you have any other USB drives plugged in, then make sure that you unplug them so that you only have the bad update drive attached. Now, next, we need to make sure that no Rock Band Blitz data is stored on your console, as this is going to interfere with the exploit. So back in the storage menu, we need to check in the internal storage. So look on your hard drive and go to the Game and Apps section, and then look for any Rock Band Blitz content. Now, I've not got any here, but if you do, you can either just select it with the Y button and delete it, or if you want to save that data, then click on the Move option and copy it over to your USB drive. So now we need to create a new profile on our Xbox, and this is going to be a local profile so that it won't be connected to Microsoft Live. So open up the Guide menu and create a profile. You can store it wherever you like, but since all of our bad update stuff is on our USB drive, I'm going to save it on there. So give it any name you want, but one that you will recognize then as your bad update profile. And then just simply follow through and complete that process. So this is the profile that we'll be using to work with our exploited console. Now, if you want, you can set this profile to be the one automatically signed in when the console boots up. So on the Guide menu again, go to the Settings and then Profile, and then select Sign In Preferences, and set this account to Auto Sign In. So finally then, we've cleaned our console, we're offline, we've got our USB drive attached, and we've got our bad update profile signed in. So this is going to be the starting point for any time that we need to enable the mod. So if you power off the machine or it crashes, you're going to need to reboot, sign into this profile, and then go from this point again. So to activate it then, we're just simply going to use the main menu to go over to our game section. If we scroll through until we find Rock Band Blitz, we can then launch it with the A button. Now, when it gets to this start screen, just give it a few seconds to initialize itself. Now, you need to get out your phone or a stopwatch or some sort of timer, and we need to set an alarm for 20 minutes time. Now, this may sound a bit strange, but it will become clear in a second. So, back on your Xbox, press A to start the game. It will now ask you to select the device, so select your USB drive and press A again. And at this point, Bad Update will start the exploit and try to hack the system. So, make sure you now start your timer. And all we do now is we have to wait. So the bad update code is trying to create a situation on the console where it can gain access to the Xbox hypervisor code layer. Now, this process involves setting up competing processes within the game code, but it's not going to work straight away. It can take up to 20 minutes to trigger. Now, even after you get to 20 minutes, it might not have been able to get the exact conditions it needs, hence the timer. So if your timer does reach 20 minutes, unfortunately, this run hasn't worked. You need to power off the console, reboot, and return to our starting point. Then run the exploit again, including the timer. Now, this is of course the big downside to the bad update. It can take some time to get into the system. Now, usually it will break in within a reasonable time, but sometimes it can take multiple tries to get it to work. So you can decrease this time a little bit by detecting when the exploit fails. So if you look at the background on the Rock Band Blitz start screen, if the exploit is still trying away in the background, this background will be moving, and there will also be some music playing. If these stop, then the exploit has failed, and all you need to do then is to simply restart your machine, and without having to wait for the full 20 minutes to pass. Now, you can also check the progress by looking at the LEDs on the power button. So at the start, only one quadrant will be lit. As the exploit progresses, you'll get 2 and then 3 quadrants, and then finally the LEDs will start to change sequence, and at this point the exploit is almost finished. But whatever what happens, just let it run through. If you have to restart, restart, but eventually you will get a hacked or modded Xbox 360. So, success! Now for me, this first run actually took about 6 goes, and each of those taking about 10 minutes before the background and music stopped. Now I'm hoping this is unusually long, as the success rate is supposed to be about 1 in 3, so it should take sort of about, at most, 3 or 4 goes. Anyway, the exploit has obviously worked now, and the Xbox is booting up the XeUnshackle payload. So at this point, it's giving us the opportunity to save some important files about our console. So make sure that you press the X button to save the console information, and then the Y button to save the bootloader file. And these files will then be saved onto your USB drive. So with those saved, press your back button and you'll drop into the normal dashboard. We can now start to run our homebrew apps. So go over to your Games menu and find XeXMenu. If you run that, you should then drop into your first homebrew app. So XeXMenu is sort of like a base file and app navigator. You can use the left and right bumper buttons to move between storage areas, and then use the D-pad to select items. So for now, just find your USB drive, and then select the apps folder, or whatever you called your homebrew apps directory. And inside there, you should see your Aurora and Simple NAND Flasher folders. So we're going to select the Simple NAND Flasher, and then we're going to highlight the default.xex file and launch it. So this will start to examine your console and generate some files for you. So the CPU key that we got earlier has just now been copied across to the CPU key.txt file, and that will be saved in the Simple NAND Flasher folder on our USB drive. As you can see down the bottom, there's only one option here, and that's to press the X button, and that then will take a backup dump of your NAND data. Now this too will be saved to the USB drive, so let's first of all make sure that all of this information is safe. So press any button to exit out of the app, and that will drop you back into the main menu. And from there, you can log out of your profile, and that will allow us then to unplug our USB drive and take it back to our computer. So on our PC, we can then navigate to the USB drive, our Apps and Simple NAND Flasher folder. And in here then, we need to copy these two files, so cpuk.txt and flashdump.bin. And we need to copy those files somewhere safe. So these files are actually very important. If you were to damage your NAND data in your console in the future, it will stop working. And you will only be able to fix it if you have these files stored. So these files are specific to your console, so you won't find anything suitable online if you lose them. Now, if you're just playing games, you're very, very unlikely to break the console. But just in case, keep these files safe. We can also then go back to the root of the USB drive and then into the bad update payload folder. So inside there, you'll find a console info.txt file and then a bootloader file with your motherboard type in the title. So for my Trinity-based Xbox, I've got this Trinity-1BL. Now again, these files need to be safely stored with the others. With that all backed up, it's now time to actually play some games. So since we've got the USB drive in our PC, let's drop a game on there to test our system. So probably the most used feature of an modded Xbox 360 is to play games from our legally obtained backup files. Now you can either make these yourself from your game disks or find them elsewhere. Now if you do go online, please do make sure that you check any copyright regulations in your region, as mostly these files are still legally protected. Now either way, you're going to need to format your game files into some sort of package that the Xbox can use. Now this is actually quite a big topic, so I have made a video on how to do this. So please do have a look at that for full details on the different ways that you can transfer games and how to do it. But for this video then, I'm going to use a game on demand or God package that I've created from a game ISO file. And again, how to do that is all covered in detail in my playing games video. Now this GOD package or God package is exactly the same as the Rock Band Blitz package that we downloaded earlier. So it's identified by its title ID, and all we need to do is to copy the whole folder into the 16 zeros folder in the content folder on our USB drive. Now once that's copied over, we're going to need to patch the executable files, just as we did for all of our homebrew apps. But for this time, we're going to use a specialist app that helps us work with our game files. Now this will make sure that we have the best chance of getting our game up and running with bad update. So head over to this web page and download the 360 Content Manager app. Now this again will come down as an archive file, so save it into your bad update folder and then extract the contents into their own folder. If we then use our File Explorer to navigate to the extracted folder, we can then run the 360 Content Manager.exe file. Now this will launch the app, which first off will ask you what you want to do. So our files are currently on the USB drive of our PC. So select Browse Content on PC. You can then just read through the pop-up message, and when you're OK with that, then we can click OK to launch the actual app. So we now need to find our GOD package, and again, we need to find the one that's on our USB drive, because that's the one we're going to be taking over to our console. So use the folder tree on the left of the 360 Content Manager app to expand out our disk drives until you find the content and then the 16 zeros folder on the USB drive. So you now need to find the GOD folder for your game. So you might find a number of GOD packages in there, but if you expand them out, you should find some contents inside the first level folder. And if you highlight that, you should see a list of the game title over in the right-hand part of the application. Otherwise, of course, you simply have a look at the folder on your PC and then just match the title ID. But so here, you can see that the app has correctly identified my game. If I highlight the game and we look at the bottom section of the app, you can see that we've got the game details, but in this box here, it's marked as locked. So in this state, bad update won't be able to play it. All I need to do is to check the game tick box in the top section, and then right click on the game title. And as you can see now, we have one of the options in there which allows us to unlock this file. And if I select that, it should then open up in the Patcher window. I can then click the Patch button down at the bottom of the window here, and that will then patch the file, and eventually it then should show up as patched. So I can now close this window, and that should drop me back to the main screen. Now if I now highlight the file again, it should show as unlocked, so this GOD package is now ready to play. Now, sometimes you might get a game show up as unlocked when you first put it in, but my advice would be to just simply go through the unlock process anyway, just to make sure that this package has fully unlocked it. So now we should be able to take this USB drive back to our Xbox 360. So if you plug in the USB drive, make sure you log into your bad update profile, and then go back to the main dashboard and across to our game menu. Now you will see our Need for Speed game listed here, and we could launch it from here if we wanted to. But what we're going to have a look at now is how to use our homebrew Aurora launcher. So for that, we're going to need to start up XeMenu. Now this time, we're going to go into the apps folder on the USB drive, but this time we're going to find the Aurora package. So inside that folder, we should then be able to find the aurora.xex file and just simply launch that. So after a short pause, you should then drop into the Aurora Dashboard. Now Aurora allows us to scan our storage areas for playable games, but at the moment it's probably not scanning anywhere, so we need to tell it where we keep our games. So if you click the Start button, which takes you into the Settings page, and then go to the Content option, we can move across with our D-pad to under the Manage Paths, and there we can click on that Add button. So each path we add tells Aurora about a folder where it should look to find our games. So we need to select the Change button to change the location, and we now need to navigate out to our USB drive and then into the Content folder. Now we know that our games or our GOD file packages are in the 16 zeros folder. So we simply need to highlight that and then press the Y to select it. So we should then drop back into our add path section, and we should have our path entered in for us. So next we have to specify how deep into that folder Aurora will scan. So I'm just going to set mine here to 3. Next, we can click Save, and that's now added our USB content folder to the scanned paths in our Aurora. Now, if you do then save other games or other game formats in separate folders, you will need to add those paths into Aurora as well before it will actually be able to find your games. So here, I know that we've got some apps in the apps folder, and I want to be able to launch those from Aurora. So again, I'm going to have to add that as a path in my Aurora dashboard. So once I've added all of my paths, I can now click the Scan Now button, and Aurora will go off and find the games. Now, I also tend to leave the auto scan function turned on so that Aurora will always check for new games as I load them. So if we now back out into the Aurora dashboard, you should start to see some placeholders for your games and apps. We're going to see in a second how we can get some artwork, but for now you should still be able to scroll through the titles, and you should see what they are appearing down at the bottom. So let's scroll through there until we actually find our game, and then we can select A to launch it. So that should mount our GOD package, start the application, and we should then eventually be into our game as if we were playing it from a disc plugged into our Xbox console. So that's our system all set up and working now, so that we can exploit the console, load up our homebrew, and then launch our games from our backup files. So the last thing we need to do is a bit of tidying up and making things run a bit more smoothly. So we saw that Aurora, well, at the moment it looks a bit crap without any cover art, but we need to go online to get hold of that. Now luckily the XeUnshackle payload that we installed has some of Dash Launches, which is another sort of homebrew application. It has some of that functionality built into it, and part of that is an Xbox Live blocker. So if you go back into the guide on the console and log out of your profile, we can then take our USB drive back over to our PC and open it up in File Explorer. So here we want to look on the root of the USB drive, and in there you'll find a file called launch.ini. Now this is the settings file for XeUnshackle. So you'll need a text editor to open it up and edit it. So you can use Notepad, or if you install an app called Notepad++, then you'll get better code highlighting, like you can see here. Now there are a number of settings that you can change inside here, and each setting has a full description of what it does and how to use it. But I would say that please only make changes to settings if you know what you're doing. So we want to check that the Microsoft Live blocking is active. So scroll down then until you find the setting called Live Block. Now that should be turned on by default, but if it's not, then just set its value to true. Now next, it would be good if our console drops straight into Aurora when we run the bad update exploit. To do this, look for the path section in our ini file, and then find the default setting. Now this is probably blank, so at the moment that will just drop you into the normal NXE dashboard, which is the standard Xbox dashboard. So we need to specify the path to our Aurora XEX file. So if we take a look on our USB drive, you can see there that we have our root, we then have our apps folder, we then have this Aurora folder, but of course it's got a more complex folder name. And inside there, we've got our aurora.xex file. And that's the file that we have to give the path for. So the easiest way to get that correct is if you right click on that file, you can do a copy as path. If we then go back to our ini file, we can actually paste that in here. Now, of course, that gives references to the drives on my computer. So we just need to tidy this line up, but it's typed in the most of it for us. So for this ini file, we do not need the inverted commas. And the drive letter at the front, as you can see up here, if you want to specify your USB drive on your Xbox, we're just simply going to use USB. So that then will become the full file path from our Xbox out to our aurora.xex file. So we've now checked that we've got our default set up, so that will hopefully then launch Aurora for us whenever we first come in. And then of course we've got down here, we've verified that our live block, wherever that happens to be, where is it? Where's live block? Live block is in here somewhere, live block. So we've got that true. And again, mine was already set to true, so that should already be enabled. So all we need to do there is we just need to save that file, and that will save that new information back onto our USB drive. So we should now be able to take that out and drop it into our Xbox again. Now, unfortunately, changes that we make to the launch.ini file will only be activated as the exploit boots up. So to make those changes take effect, you would need to reboot the console and then rerun the bad update. However, if like me, your live block was already turned on, then the only thing that we're currently missing is having Aurora as the default dashboard. So we're actually safe to go online and download our cover art, and we'll actually again get the Aurora coming in as a default dashboard the next time that we set up our bad update. So all I need to do here is get my USB plugged back into my console, and I can log back into my bad update account, and then use the guide button to get back to the console settings. Now, this trick of using the guide button to get into the console settings will also work whenever you're in Aurora, and that will then take you straight back out to the main dashboard. So from there, we can go to our network settings, and then we can reconnect to our Wi-Fi, or if you're using Ethernet, then just plug that cable back in. So we can now back out to our main dashboard, and then head over to our game section and relaunch XeXMenu. And again, we go into our apps and Aurora, and then launch our Aurora desktop. So once that's booted up, we can then go into our settings using the start button. And inside there, we've got an assets section. And you can see here that we can specify what assets we want to download. And then we can use the download button at the top to go and do that. And then you can see sort of in the background in that top right corner, it is now downloading a number of those assets. And if we watch the dashboard itself, we should start to see that box art and all coming in. And there we have all of our games all updated. So if I scroll across to our Need for Speed game and then use the Y button to go to its details, you can see now that we have some game information, some cover art, some box art, and so on. And again, the same for Rock Band Blitz. So as you can see, Aurora then gives us this great game choice menu, and also then lots of details, and just makes the whole Xbox gaming experience just that much better. So now, of course, that we've finished downloading that material, it is important to make sure that you go back then to your system settings, into your network settings, and then of course disable that Wi-Fi connection again. We really don't want that being live the next time we boot up again. So hopefully then you've now got a fully working bad update system. Now, as you've seen, this does work, and if you're on a non-hard moddable console, this is your only option. But if you do have the option to use either JTAG or RGH, I would still recommend that route, as the console will just boot straight into the modded state without any delays. With that said though, the bad update mod will let you use all of the most important features of a modded console, including playing games from backups and running loads and loads of retro emulators. Now in this video, we've really just started to explore what's possible, so please do keep an eye open for more bad update tutorials over the coming weeks. If you found this useful, please do click that like button and subscribe to the channel for lots more gaming, modding, electronics and making videos. I look forward to seeing you again very soon, and bye for now. For more games programming, electronics projects and retro gaming, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel and visit my website.